I am so glad you're here. I really am. You know, your earbuds are very precious, and it's an honor to be coming through them right now. If you were with me last week and you're back, I so appreciate it. If you're joining for the very first time, welcome to Who Do You Think You Are? I'm your host, Catherine Duca. I've been practicing psychotherapy and practicing as a self esteem coach for a really long time, a good number of years, 3 decades. And it's my pleasure and my honor to bring you the heart of my work. For those of you who, again, may just be joining, the message of this show, Who Do You Think You Are, is the notion that who you think you are isn't necessarily who you truly are. And I believe that who you and we truly are is infinitely more magnificent than you think. So on this show, we go in search of our magnificence. Welcome. With that as a backdrop, I want to talk about our topic tonight, which is a topic A, very close to my heart, and B, really on the forefront of my work this week. Um, as you would imagine, this week was a challenging week. I have to say that I haven't had a week like this professionally since 9/11. Although, you know, vastly different circumstances, the level and the depth of emotionality and the range of emotions was really comparable, and people were struggling this past week. And I imagine will continue to struggle. But my intention for this show this evening is to help shrink the struggle maybe just a little bit. So tonight's topic is belonging to yourself. Belonging to yourself. When was the last time you asked yourself, do I belong to myself? Okay, probably never. Most of us don't ponder that question. But I submit that if you do dive into that question and live in that question, what you will quickly realize is it's one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves. It actually underlies almost everything we do. Belonging to ourselves has a direct impact on every relationship we're a part of, every interaction we have, every life choice we make. It is really so basic and fundamental to how we navigate this life that I had to talk about it tonight. So let's dive in. I'm going to begin with a question that I received from a listener this week. And usually I save the questions for after the break, but I'm going to start with this question. I think you'll see why. So, from Stephanie. Hi, Catherine. I'm finding it so hard to connect with anything empowering these days. I can't locate my strength or my resolve. I recall that one of your listeners said last week that she felt untethered. I didn't realize it then, but that's exactly how I'm fe- feeling. That's exactly how I'm feeling. I don't know what or whom to count on. I feel like I'm lost in space. You can just hear the emotionality behind that comment, right? Um, what I want to say, I've actually gotten a number of questions this week. What should I do? How should I cope? How do I get, how do I get the election off my mind? How do I get other, other painful circumstances out of my mind? I find myself ruminating. Well, my answer to that right off the bat, and you may not like this initially, but hang in there with me. I, I don't know. I don't know what any individual should necessarily do in their minds to help them cope. But I do know this, it's more about inquiry, getting through as Stephanie is asking, getting through questions like this, getting through this time really is less about an answer. We all want answers, right? But they are really few and far between because it's really more about inquiry and what I like to call living in the question. So if the question tonight is, how do I belong to myself? That's where we have to lean in. What is the meaning behind this question? You know, so much of what many of us are dealing with, and again, yes, the election, but so many things, because this is not a new phenomenon. What do I do with the pain in the world? What do I do with the pain perhaps in my own life or the lives of people I care about? The question behind the question there, if you really listen, has to do with uncertainty. Uncertainty. And I submit to you, I, I get this from my clients, really. I learned this. The number one problem that people struggle with most often is, how do I deal with that which I don't know? I don't know what's coming down the pike. I don't know. I'm uncertain. So I'm going to speak tonight somewhat generically to specific questions, but um, I want to provide a framework within which to begin this inquiry of, how do I belong to myself? Now, if you've never pondered that question, I bet you know what it's like not to belong to yourself. Even if you never quite put it in those terms, what's it like not to belong to yourself? Well, isn't it like you're very aware of other people's expectations and other people's judgments, and you sort of play to an audience, and you look to other people to reassure you for things that are going on within yourself. So not belonging to yourself is being off kilter, off your axis of what you know to be true about yourself. So I'm hoping with our time together, we can get closer to getting back onto this axis. So, you know, we live in a world that does not support our being our true selves. I think the world as it exists now is rather inhospitable to showing up as our true selves. When was the last time someone asked you, how do you really feel about thus and so? What's really going on with you? Don't you think we live in a culture that glorifies being upbeat and, rising above or moving on to the next thing or striving for the next goal or acquisition, on and on and on? We don't really ask one another, and I don't think we ask ourselves enough, what is really going on with me at the deepest level? So, by the way, forgive me if you hear shuffling and hear me switching devices. I've got a lot to say tonight, and I want to be sure I don't miss anything. So, let's go back to uncertainty, because belonging to ourselves really means, when we are swimming in a sea of uncertainty and we can't touch the sides, and it's like being in the ocean, what do we do? What do we do? Well, if we're in a body of water, we have to learn how to tread water. We have to learn how to float, which is to say, we have to learn how to stay awake. The easiest thing to do when we're up against adversity is to anesthetize the discomfort, numb out, very common. Drink something, buy something, eat something, uh, scroll to no end. We literally numb our minds. Now, some of that, some of the time, of course, is not an issue. It's not a problem, but it's a matter of degree. So, in the ocean of uncertainty, when we can't touch the sides, how do we stay afloat? How do we stay above water? Well, number one, we have to take notice, I believe. We have to kind of take the aerial view and notice what we're doing. Are we numbing out? Are we going so deep into anxiety that we can't help futurizing or ruminating? We're so in our heads, right? Or are we so downhearted that we feel hopeless and helpless and immobilized and paralyzed? You know, these are two states that I think many people find themselves in. And then what do we do from there? Well, we tend to try to cover up those states, right? Who wants to walk around looking anxious, or who wants to reveal the fact that we feel so downhearted? So we adopt these facades and these masks. And then what does that do? That helps people relate to our protection rather than our genuineness. So imagine this, right? We're all walking around mask to mask. You have to ask yourself, how does anything ever get done in a deep way? But those of us who are intent on expanding and deepening our consciousness, we know together that that's not where we want to stall. We want to be able to look beneath these masks and tap into our genuine self. So, what does belonging to ourselves entail? Because, like Stephanie, I think she said it so powerfully when she said she feels so lost, she doesn't know whom or what she can count on or believe in. Untethered again. Okay. A scary way to feel, really such a difficult way to feel, to show up in life, to go to work, to raise the kids, knowing that that's what you carry inside. So, when we can't count on anything outside of ourselves, and I submit that very often we cannot count on things outside of ourselves, the question then becomes, and this is important, this is where it's at, I think, what is it that we can count on within ourselves? What do we know for sure? And this brings us to core values, because this is how we're going to tread water. This is how we're going to rely on ourselves. Core values. You know, I often talk to my clients about core values, and although they have them, many haven't reflected on what they are. And I think until we reflect on them, I think it's more difficult to harness them. Okay. I'm just noticing a comment here. Let's see. I often remember something the Dalai Lama said. This is from Dawn, a metaphor for how he handles uncertainty or turbulence. He said, on the surface, there can be very rough waves, thrashing and fierce. But if you go, this is good. If you go deep down inside the ocean, there is calm and steadiness. Going within is where we find our steadiness and calm. Well, Dawn, there it is. There it is. If we're looking for the steadiness outside of ourselves, if we rail against the unsteadiness and protest relentlessly and are in non-acceptance of that which we are railing against, we're going to remain in a chaotic state. Now, this is not to say at all that it is not incumbent upon us to evaluate things and weigh in on those things. And each of us has a voice, and each of us has the right to express our voice. But what I'm saying is, we will find our truest voice if we go, as Dawn and the Dalai Lama are telling us tonight, go below the surface, tap into ourselves. And what are we but our core beliefs, right? So to be aware of what they are, and I'm going to mention a few, there are many, but I'll talk about a few, to harness our core beliefs and to understand where they come from, where they come from. They come from family, they come from things we've gleaned from society, but they also come from something much larger and much more enduring than our time here on earth. So, core values. Here are a few: integrity, compassion, kindness, empathy, humility, curiosity, loyalty, honesty, love. I'll read them again quickly: integrity, compassion, kindness, empathy, curiosity, loyalty, honesty, humility, love. These are core values, intrinsic to who we are. And the most striking thing about them, and what I hope to convey tonight, is no one gave us these values. You know, we didn't earn them. We didn't win them in the lottery. No one bestowed them upon us. And therefore, here's the good news, no one can take them from us. So when we're floating in this big ocean known as uncertainty, what is going to help us from sinking and help us stay awake is conscious knowledge that we embody these core values. That's step one. Okay. Step two is, from this helicopter view, this aerial view, we want to make sure that we are living as much as we can in alignment with those core values. Here's where we ask ourselves, is there a disconnect between what I say I believe, what I profess to believe, even what I hold dear, and the way I'm behaving or the way I'm showing up? Because if there's a disconnect in that gap, we are going to take on water, okay? And we might even become submerged. So we want to be in alignment as much as we can. So let's take, for example, let's take honesty, okay? Let's say you know that you uphold honesty, you believe in it, you cherish it, you see yourself as an honest person. But from 30,000 feet, you notice here and there that you tell lies. Maybe you tell white lies and you justify it, no big deal. Maybe you withhold your true feelings in conversations that you perceive to be conflict laden. And so you want to avoid those feelings. So you either turn them off so that you're not even aware of them, or you edit them and project a different meaning or different image entirely. That is a form of being dishonest. You're being dishonest with yourself. You're being dishonest with the other person. Now, this, of course, is not to say, for everything, there's a reaction and equal, an opposite reaction. This is not to say that anybody should be blunt and harsh and insensitive with their honesty. I'm not talking about that. Of course, we should be sensitive and we should be tactful. But I think the more we are truthful with ourselves and can admit these truths to ourselves, and then go in and understand why we feel the way we feel, then I think we show up more aligned with this core value of honesty, right? So just take a moment, digest that, if you will, because this pertains to all of the core values. I've said it each time we've gotten together that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And in our spiritual beliefs, we know how we want to be. We know how we want to live. But in our human experience, because of hurts, because of disappointments, because of traumas, because of, anxiety and fear and insecurities, we put on layers and layers and layers of defense mechanisms and pretense, not because we're bad, nothing of the sort, but because we're just trying to make our way. And guess what? Everybody else is trying to make theirs as well. Okay? So when we talk about anchoring ourselves in something that we can count on, Stephanie, I hope you're listening. Okay, because this might be helpful. I hope it is. What you can count on is yourself, as long as you mine your core values. That way, when the wind blows in and the category fives hit, you will still be standing. You will still be standing because you know who you are. And let me tell you something. Once you know who you are and you get used to living from that place more and more and more, because it's not a one and done, it's a matter of deepening and expanding. But as you do that, let me tell you, that becomes an acquired taste. That becomes something you don't want to live without. And a life of pretense, or as I call it, chameleonizing, giving your power away, abdicating your strength, that becomes actually much less appetizing. And instead, what becomes infinitely more attractive to you is the way you feel on the inside when you are integrated, when your actions are integrated with your highest beliefs. And let me tell you, nobody can touch you. And it simply feels good. So, digest. I just want to glance over here. I think Dawn has a few things to say. Dawn, you're going to have to be a guest. We are anticipating a great deal of chaos and turbulence. I've had periods of time like that in my life. And now, in this moment in time and history, I expect more to come. Yes. But I want to bring myself into what I experience and how I cope with it. Conscious choice of who do I want to be in my life and in the world, and what are the values I believe in that are part of the creation and mandating of that self alignment. Yes, that's it. Well, Dawn, you said a mouthful there, didn't you? Conscious choice of who do I want to be. Here's where I talk about autopilot. So many of us, right? We're busy. We're busy, we're preoccupied, just with the logistics of life. And we don't stop to realize that, what's that expression? We're the dog who's wagging the tail. Sometimes we feel like we're the tail being wagged. And in that case, we are at the mercy. We are at the effect of circumstances. And I think what Dawn is referring to here is making a conscious choice not to be at the effect of anything outside of ourselves. Will it be a struggle? Yes, I'm not saying it's easy, but where do we set our sights? Where do we plant the stake in the ground? And that comes down to who we choose to be, how we want to show up. And then we're in the right struggle. When we're oblivious to what is driving us, we can't correct anything. We're not in charge of our lives. Then we abdicate to the audience. We don't belong to ourselves. But when we consciously own how we want to show up, we are not oblivious. We are in the right struggle. So even if we vacillate or we go outside of the struggle for a bit, we know we have a place to come back to. We know we can return to love. A very good book, by the way, Marianne Williamson, We Return to Love. But we can return to our essence. Our essence is our power. No one is coming to save us. I say this all the time. No one is coming to rescue us. If there's a monster under the bed, we cannot hide our eyes. We have to remove our hands, look under the bed, confront that illusion ourselves, and say, I've got this. I'm not going to wait for you or you or you to save me or reassure me. I'm going to reassure myself because I have the power of my values inside of myself. And now I want to turn to another question that came in. And let's see if I can find it here. Okay. And as I read this question, you can see if it's something you've thought about before. Okay. After a lifetime of only feeling happy when others around you are happy, how do you learn to stop prioritizing others and focus on yourself? Again, after a lifetime of only feeling happy when others around you are happy, how do you learn to prioritize others and finally focus on yourself? Well, thank you very much for that question. How do you prioritize yourself? Well, you know, that sounds a little bit like the hallmark of a people pleaser. And I can say I am a recovering people pleaser myself. I have to remind myself every day to stay true to my anchor. So here's the thing that we people pleasers need to do. This is rule number one. It's a challenge, but it's an invitation at the same time. We have to dare to have other people displeased with us. People pleaser. We have to dare. This is what cuts it. We have to dare to have another person displeased with us. And displeased is a kind of a big tent. That means disagree with us or be irritated with us or angry with us or come at us or probably worst of all, right? This is the thing most of us fear, getting rejected. We have to, okay, this is difficult, but you're swimming in the ocean, you can't touch the sides, you have to float, you have to stay awake, you have to stay awake to your truth. That's the thing. You have to risk other people's displeasure. There's no other way around it. Because think about it. What we people pleasers do is we hold on to people, maintain their good graces, have them approve of us by abandoning ourselves. Think about that. That's what we're doing, whether we realize it or not. We're holding on to people, keeping them close to us by manipulating the reality and having the person believe that we believe or we agree with them. We agree with them when that may not be the case, or we have a difference of opinion. So many of us are uncomfortable with conflict. I'm going to devote a whole show to having better conversations and dealing with conflict. But right now, for this question, I want to say, I think that's what you might want to think about. What would it be like if this person or that person was displeased with you? What would you do then? Well, I submit to you for your highest consideration that after a momentary pinch and sadness, and maybe even some grief, okay, I'm not saying it's small, but I submit that you will be okay. What makes me say that? Because if think about how you feel right now. Think about what prompted you to have that question in you to begin with. You probably haven't felt good being happy when everyone else around you is happy because you might not have felt happy. So you were being ingenuine to yourself. That was your secret. That was your secret. So think about how that felt or currently feels, and then weigh that against someone being irritated or even rejecting. Let's go all the way to rejecting you. That feels awful. I'm not saying it doesn't. But if you're rejected and you still have you, I think you come out ahead. I think you come out ahead. Nothing feels as good as standing by your own self, honoring yourself, mastering your own emotions. Nothing feels as good as that. And I think nothing feels as distasteful as abdicating yourself, not having your own back, not being able to count on your own self. I think that feels worse. So, to the person who wrote this, if you're listening, I, I, I hope you can take that in, and maybe you'll let me know at some future point how that is. We people pleasers have to dare to be ourselves, and we have to risk rocking that boat. And you know what? Here's the kicker. Sometimes we get rejected, no doubt about it, but sometimes we don't. I have to say, sincerely, some of the standout interactions I've had in my life began with me disagreeing with the person. Not harshly, but disagreeing. And for me, it was an experiment. And I'm not saying I wasn't nervous, I was. But I found that, you know, I said, here's how I see it. How do you see it? Let's see how close or far apart we are from each other. That creates space. Agreement is no space, especially if it's an agreement that's not really truthful. That doesn't create any space between you and the other person. And the space I'm referring to is the space where you can mix it up with another person. You can exchange ideas. You can have a spirited debate. As I said last week, I got together with an acquaintance who voted the other way. We had, our minds were not changed in the slightest, but we had a respectful conversation, and that wasn't nothing. So, election, no election, in our lives, I invite you to take this possibility with you, that in the disagreement, there is a portal where you and the other person can actually find common ground. And if not common ground, respect each other's individuality. So I thank you so much for that question. I really appreciate it. I'm seeing something in the chat. I have to move out of camera. We show them the self we know they want. Yes, not necessarily the self that's really who we are. So we betray ourselves to please them. We abandon ourselves in the process. Patricia, exactly. Exactly. That's what I mean. And then you know what that does? It even goes beyond what you've so correctly written, Patricia. What happens is we continue to delude ourselves that we are only worth loving or only worth being in relationship with if we hand out agreement. The more we do that sort of thing, the more we reinforce and believe that notion that that's our ticket to intimacy. That's our ticket to acceptance and approval. Chameleonizing. It's very thin. It's very ungratifying. It doesn't taste good when you think about it. So Trish, we show them, you're right, we show them what we think they want, not necessarily who we really are. And so this is exactly what the title of the show is all about. Who do we think we are? If we don't examine it, we just maintain the superficial, what's that word? Mary Poppins, superficial, calidocious. I can't remember. Somebody will tell me. You know, we maintain that illusion and we never step into the still waters the still waters, the calm waters of our personal truth. So, Dawn, we betray or abandon ourselves out of needing to get our needs met for love, belonging, validation. So I believe self-compassion is called for. Right, right. We don't abandon ourselves for the sport of it, do we? We abandon ourselves because we're so hungry. We so long for approval and community. We were just talked out of our true selves long, long ago. So we've adopted this way of being. It's a way of being. It's not who we are. It is a way of being. So think about this. We don't want anyone else to abandon us here or there. But in exchange for that, we may very well abandon ourselves day to day, hour to hour, decade after decade. How does that feel? So another core value is courage. Courage. What is courage? Courage is the willingness to take a risk. It doesn't have to be off the high dive, okay? But it could be in the low end. It's the courage to experiment. Because from that aerial view, you look at what you're doing, if you're doing any of this, and you make a decision and you say, I choose, I powerfully, I choose powerfully to live in my authenticity. And you do it by little experiments. And you experiment perhaps with people that you feel safe with. Again, no high dive. I would never advocate that. But little by little. And as you do it once, as you do it twice, and the sky doesn't fall in, and you either handle the rejection that you feared, or you don't get rejected at all, you actually experience more closeness with that person. Okay, that's the irony here. The more you do that, the more that becomes incorporated into the fabric of your being. And the fabric of your being creates that safety net I talked about in the first show, the safety net, the internal safety net. And the more you do it, the tighter the net gets. And then you don't have to fear much at all. Yes, concern, again, because I don't want anybody to, I want to be clear about this. We're not abdicating our voice. We are finding our truest voice. Okay. In between election days, 365, if we endeavor to be our truest selves, our best advocate, if we can truly be our best friend, and as Dawn is saying, afford self-compassion, extend compassion to ourselves, just as we would a dear friend or a child, because we were raised a certain way. And so it feels a little dangerous, perhaps, to disagree. Maybe there were consequences years ago for disagreeing. Maybe we were dismissed. Maybe we were punished, ridiculed, or worse, made fun of, all kinds of things. So we vowed, I'm not doing that again. I'm going to make myself airtight. I'm going to rejection proof my life. Well, I suppose you can do that, rejection proof your life, but then that means, well, you know what that means. That means you're living in a space that's so tiny, so locked behind your wall that it's very lonely there. And again, I submit to you, is anything worth that? Is anything worth that? So there you have it. Let me see if there's anything else in the chat. See if there's anything else I wanted to say and didn't. Core values, living in alignment. Every day, if you can be willing to monitor yourself just very gently and in a friendly way. Um, you're welcome, Mara. You're welcome. If you can monitor yourself in a friendly way and notice when you are leaving yourself behind, if you can notice right there in real time, or if you can't do it in real time, but you notice a day later or a week later, it doesn't matter. And you say, gee, when I had that conversation with so and so, I played it safe. I wasn't really genuine. I was biting my tongue. Well, then you can say, wow, the next time I'm in conversation with that person, maybe I can revisit and say, I've given this some thought and I'm seeing things a little differently. May I share my thoughts with you? Or if not with that person, note to self the next time around. And then what happens is you do that closer and closer to real time. And before you know it, and I can almost guarantee this will happen for you, the more you catch yourself in real time, because that's the moment when you can sort of autocorrect. Oh, right now I'm saying something chameleonish. Oh, wait a minute. I heard that podcast and I thought about things. I don't want to do that. Oh, wait, let me rephrase. You know what? I see things differently. May I share? This is how I see it. I'm wondering how you see it. A very friendly, very curiosity oriented way of approaching potential discomfort. So let's be mindful this week of the masks we wear, the judgments we place on ourselves, the censorship that we impose on ourselves, and let's help ourselves gently, kindly, compassionately invite ourselves to be more truthful. Because remember, what we're going for is the safety net. We're going for retethering ourselves. This is a process, but this is where we're headed. Retethering ourselves to what we know for sure. Rain, shine, hurricane, whatever. Those of us in the Northern Hemisphere may have looked out the window this week and saw the absolutely awesome, astounding beaver moon. Incredible. The moon is always there. The sun is always there. The horizon is always there. But they are often obscured with clouds, with self-doubt, with apprehension, with assumptions, trepidation. And we forget that the moon exists. But the good news is it never goes away. It never goes away. And the same divine intelligence that keeps the moon up there and the sun and the ocean and the grass growing and all of that is the same intelligence that is within each of us. So that's why I say the you think you are is far less magnificent than the you truly are. So thank you for listening. I hope this conversation has encouraged you, perhaps even ushered you to make some experiments this week. Come back and let me know. I really want to get to know as many of you as I can. I look at this as a recurring therapy session each week, you know. Not here to analyze, but to inspire and to unpack things and to find our way, you and I together, into that magnificent, clear, calm depth that is in each of us. Thank you. Thank you for visiting. Drift off to sleep tonight peacefully. You deserve a good night's sleep. Whatever is keeping you up will be there tomorrow. For tonight, just know that you've got everything inside of you, and it's beautiful, and it's lovable, and it's magnificent. And so does everyone else, by the way. So does everyone else. So drift off. Sweet dreams. I would love to meet you back here next week at the same time. You're listening to Who Do You Think You Are on this wonderful network, New Thought Media. Till next week.